Welcome to Multiple Cameras. In this video you will add another camera to the scene, change the primary camera, learn how to quickly move the camera around and change the camera's properties. So let's hop straight on over into Blender. So we're left with our bunny here, and we're going to hop back from the image editor, which we're in at the moment, over to the 3D view. Now we're over in the 3D view, I'm just going to move this across just a little, and I'm simply going to take a duplicate of our camera. So I'm going to zoom out a little, select my camera in the 3D view, it's highlighted orange, and using Shift and D, make a duplicate and place it over there. So we've now got two cameras in our scene. If we go down to view and view from the camera view, it will go straight back to camera, well, the one that's just called camera and one called camera 001. So I'm going to name this camera over here camera wide, and we'll make that a wide angle lens in a moment. So we've got our two cameras here, but how do we actually view it from the camera, or this wide one that we've just made? Well, once that's selected, down on view and cameras, you can set the active object as the camera. You can see the shortcut there is Control and number pad 0. Just switching to the active camera is number pad 0. So it's very straightforward. Your cursor does have to be in the 3D window. Control and 0 will switch the camera over here. So we've got these two cameras that we can select and go backwards and forwards between. Have to be over the 3D view. There we go. So why would we want to do this? Well, there will be times in your scene where you don't want to keep having to move the camera about between certain positions, where you can just have it set up. Another reason would be if you had different styles of camera, so a wide angle where you can see lots of a scene, or a close-in shot. There's a lot of theory on the size of focal length as to what you require, but this isn't a camera course, it's a course on Blender, so we'll only touch on it very lightly. Focal length is measured in millimeters, and basically the lower the number, the wider the angle will be, so the more you'll be able to fit in your scene, and the closer your camera will have to be to any object. And you also get that very wide angle look. A lot of skater videos and things like that have that fisheye lens. Now a fisheye is an extreme wide angle, it pretty much encompasses everything in front of the camera, but it's a bit distorting as well. Portrait tends to be around 80mm, something like that. Telephoto, if you're taking a photo of a bird or an animal in the distance, you may have 200, 300, 400, even a higher millimeter lens. Now, if you were replicating something in Blender that you wanted to do in real life, then of course you would have to make sure you'd also set up your camera appropriately. By default, and we can have a look at these settings now, we've got the camera selected at the top here. In the properties window, there's a camera icon, and when we click on that, we can see the focal length here is set to 35. And that's great, that's a great standard size. 50 mimics the human eye, that's a good number to remember there. But of course, it all depends on what you want to do. If you're doing a wide open landscape, you probably want a wide angle lens. If you're zooming right into the eye of an animal, you're probably not going to be right up next to that animal, so it'd look really odd if it was wide angle. But if you're looking for an odd type of view, then it's a perfect way of getting there. So we've got our focal length here, we can lower that and raise it, and if we set that down to something like 10, it looks like it's just moved further back from the rabbit, but it in fact hasn't. But I want to move my camera now towards that. Now, it is selected at the moment, but one of the great things you can just do is open up your Properties tab, or press the N key, and up here there's a button that says Lock Camera to View. Now the great thing about this is, as you move around, the camera moves too, which is very powerful when you're having to position a camera. So now we're at this silly wide angle, you can see that the rabbit becomes much more distorted, and if we take that down to something crazy like 5, that's not what the rabbit looks like anymore, but we can fit the whole rabbit in the scene. If we come out of the camera view for a second, we'll see that the camera is actually there. It's really, really close to our rabbit. Now, if we set that back to let's say 50 like the human eye. Oh, that might not actually work. Oh yeah, there we go. We're right up against the rabbit, so there's a big difference between 50 and 5, as you can see. And if this was a real rabbit, we'd probably be taking a photo from a 300mm lens or greater, and yeah, we would be very close to a rabbit at that point. So we can move the camera out. I've just pressed Z twice there to move just backwards, and now to fit the whole rabbit in view, you can see it's also not distorted as much. Well, here's a good thing to watch here. We're reaching the clipping point of the camera, so I will just leave it about there so the head's in shot, but let's go see where that camera happens to be. And I'm going to remember to turn off lock camera to view, because now when I move away, I'll be able to see that the camera's all the way over there, as if you were hiding in the bushes taking a photo of this rabbit. So there we go, we've changed some of the camera properties. We can move around, control and number pad 0, or down here in the cameras menu under the view menu here, cameras, you can set an active one. So if we want to go to this wide angle lens here, and I go over the 3D view and go control and 0, there we go, we're back to that one. I can lock the camera to view and just rotate it round and move it about so that then I get it back in shot absolutely fine. Now the active camera is the one that renders as well, so if we go ahead and render here, it will be using the camera wide in order to render our shot. However, if we then set the active camera to this one here, just the one that's called camera, so there we go, that's camera wide, rendering that one. Now if we go back over to the 3D view and go to camera and go view, cameras, set camera, set active objects as the camera, there we go, that's that done. Now if we go and render again, we're now going to be rendering it from that camera viewpoint. So if you're playing about with this, make sure that you've got the right camera when it comes to rendering the shots that you want to do. Okay guys, it's challenge time. I'd like you to create another camera. So create a couple of new cameras, play about with the settings that we've just done, get used to how the camera handles, and set one of the new cameras to a wide angle, bring it quite close to the bunny, and I suggest about 18mm. Pause the video now and give that a go. Okay guys, welcome back. Let's hop straight back over into Blender. So I've already created a couple of cameras here, and I'm going to call this one here camera 35, and the other camera up here I'm going to call it camera 300. Oh, not 330, 300. And I'm going to duplicate another camera. It's the easiest way of, I could add a new camera to our scene if I wanted to. But I'm just going to duplicate this camera 35 with Shift and D. And I'm going to whiz all the way over to it by Control and 0 so I can see what's going on with camera 000. So I'm going to call this camera 18 so I know what it is. Down in the lens properties of the camera, I'm going to set that to 18 and see what the view's like. And I'm going to position the camera. I'm going to lock the camera to view, and let's just zoom in just a little bit more. Probably about there. I'm going to rotate round a little. Let's look up on the bunny. Let's make the bunny huge in our scene. Zoom out ever so slightly. I'm not quite happy with that. I want to see more of the ears in the scene. This way a little and rotate around. And of course, this is all artistic license. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. There we go, let's just render and see how that looks, because that's the active image. It's always a good idea to render things out, or at least have a small part of the scene rendering. Excellent, so that's what my rabbit looks up like when it's got an 18mm lens pressed against its face. I'm just going to make sure that I've got on here, let's go back to the 3D view, I'm going to uncheck this lock camera to view, because the last thing I want to do is actually move the camera after I've set it all up. One thing you will notice is that when you zoom in and out, that's obviously the view the camera's got there, When you click lock camera to view, well, now the camera's zooming in and out. So as before, you probably saw that it was like that on my screen and I was zooming in and out. I could see enough on my screen, sorry if you couldn't see much going on there, but you could zoom in and reposition it from there and get a much better feel about what's going on. Brilliant. How did you guys get on? Love to see your wide angle rabbits. Please share them in the discussions, and I will see you in the next lecture.